Welcome to this special broadcast. I'm your host, Catherine Taylor Mousseau, and joining me is Mark Griffin, the chair of the board of directors for the Lionel Kelland Hospice. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Now, Mark, we are sitting now in the suite, the model suite, and I also do want to mention off the top that we've enjoying the wonderful spaces people eventually will, but we are also socially distanced and following all the proper protocols to make this a very safe and informative interview. Mark, let's just start by opening up. Many people do know what the Lionel Kelland Hospice is, certainly all the people in our region, but there will be people watching this from far and wide. Would you like to just tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's residential hospice. It's not a new concept, but it is certainly new to Newfoundland and Labrador. We started this process a number of years ago, and we built a base of support from the community. We've also got the government online to partner with us to the tune of roughly $3 million for the capital expense plus the design cost. In addition to that, they've contributed on an operating basis, or they're going to contribute rather, $1.3 million annually. And the idea is to basically recognize that the resident and the family of the resident are the client, and it allows an individual to have a dignified death in a home-like setting as opposed to an institution. And that's basically the genesis of what we are. It's a continuum of your healthcare, the provision of healthcare from birth through to death. And it was recognized by a number of health professionals in our community that this was a deficiency. So it started there, and bit by bit it grew. The building that we're in now was donated by the Presentation Sisters. We've raised in excess of $1 million from the community in addition to the government's contribution. So it's been very, very well received. So that's essentially the background, I guess, of how we got here today.
Well, Mark, certainly I believe I'm correct in saying that Newfoundland has never had a hospice. This will be the first hospice in our province.
That is correct, yes. And we're very excited about that. What we hope is that this will basically be the genesis of others, because while this is going to be a province-wide facility, we would expect over time the need for these is going to grow. Now, well, I shouldn't say it's going to grow. We're going to realize the need for it is going to be larger than this one facility, but we're proud to be what will be the first one, and we certainly envision a point in time when there's a number of these throughout the province servicing everybody.
Mark, when this idea began, and to take it from that point to where we are now, has it been a period of, would you say, 2 or 3 years, or is it longer than that?
Oh, it's been it's probably close to 5 years from the point that the original health professionals had this as an idea. So we're probably close to 5 years on that. We're probably 4 years of board formation and things of that nature. We're probably about a year and a half from the government's partnership with us in terms of the capital funding as well as the operational funding. So, those would be the points along the timeline, if you will.
Mark, it's been a very, very difficult year for every charitable organization, for churches. I mean, none of us expected 2020 to look like this with COVID. And how certainly has this impacted this project?
It's been difficult. It basically put us on hold, because if you go back, we had called for tenders to secure a prime consultant to do the design work. Those tenders closed sometime in January. The timeline was, I think, on the 9th of March was when we were going to actually award the tender, and the design work was basically going to start literally the day after. And of course, we all know what happened around that time in March. So all of that really was put on hold. Now we're back on track now. So we are now, the design is ongoing. We are now where we probably would have been in early April had the pandemic not hit. So we've got that back on track, but obviously it has impacted the fundraising. We had, for example, in memoriam gifts was a significant part of our fundraising through funerals. Obviously, those types of gatherings are no longer permitted. We had third-party events that, say, St. Joseph's Church would organize or Rotary would organize, and various partners. Obviously, they're not able to proceed in the same manner. So, but we're working through that, and we're redesigning basically how these things are going to work. So it's it certainly set us back on a timeline, but it's certainly not going to set us back on what the ultimate goal is going to be.
Yes, and actually, from a financial point of view, how close are you to where you wanted to be comparatively? How far behind do you feel you might be?
I don't view us as behind financially. We're probably a little bit behind on a timeline basis, in the sense that what we're doing now in December of 2020, we had hoped to be doing in April of 2020. So it's almost as if we were in suspended animation for a period of time until the pandemic kind of worked through. Because even in our dealings with government's an important partner in this. But even in our dealings with them, that would be necessary, getting the funding agreements and memorandums of understanding. Even that couldn't proceed because obviously they were all preoccupied and focused on COVID, as they should have been, and whatnot. But we like to think now we're past that. We recognize that there will be some implications for how fundraisers are going to have to work, having regard to social distance. But we're not in a holding pattern anymore.
No, and I think that all organizations are recognizing that, and people are very, very inventive. I think I read in your newsletter that you're going to be having Hike for Hospice is one concept, and we are seeing that all over the internet world. That can be done virtually.
Yeah.
So I think people will definitely be creative and adapt to continuing support with events.
And there's no doubt. And one of the things that did, was exposed, I guess, through the pandemic, and there were a lot of people who really died alone because of an inability to have people around them. So that has certainly raised the profile of how important a dignified and a death with your loved ones around you, how important that is. And certainly in amongst all of the bad things that came to pandemic, certainly we think anyway that there's been a heightened awareness of the importance of what we are trying to do here and what other hospices throughout the country do as well.
Yeah, it's actually an excellent point. And I think what happens, where we're sitting now is very much like a family and a home setting. And what essentially happens is the family members can be loving and with their loved ones rather than caregivers at the time of passing. And I think that's a huge difference in that relationship and in that important point in all their lives.
Yeah, and that is the fundamental difference. If you look around this room, anybody looking at this room would, if we didn't tell them what it is, would think it's a hotel room. Maybe, it doesn't have an institutional look. It does look like a home. It looks like a place you'd call home, the fixtures and so on. And that's the premise. And as you say, we allow the we allow the family and the extended family of the resident, we allow them to be loved ones and share those precious moments that are at a point when there's very few of them left, and not be preoccupied with the care. Obviously they are going to provide care and comfort to the family, to the loved one, but that's not going to be the primary focus. We'll have professional help to do that, so they can really deal with the grieving, the goodbyes, the last birthdays, etc. So and do so in a dignified, in a proper setting. We all recognize that when a person is dying, it's a spiritual time. There's many things that go on in one's mind and in the family's mind. So this allows them to deal with that, hopefully in an unobstructed fashion. Because one thing we do know, In many instances, when families provide the care to a dying family member, in many cases, it's not uncommon that they themselves have some complications that arise from that, whether it's depression, whether it's physical, because they've been drained if they're older, and so on. So we think that this allows the family to just simply, love the loved one and receive the love of the loved one. So.
Mm-hmm. And this facility, as you say, is a very comforting facility and environment. But it, also on the other side of this room, which people can't see, there's a hospital bed. And even though it has a beautiful quilt on it and so on, it's still the service that they're going to need in terms of managing pain or what, all the other things that go along with the dying process. But this facility itself is also so much more than this room. This is wonderful. Each suite, I think you're going to have 10 or 12 suites?
Well, the design is we'll have 10 suites. Mm-hmm. We're going to have actually on the main floor, on the second floor, we're going to have some residential suites that will accommodate family who are here. And multi-purpose rooms. There's a chapel in this building, so that's going to stay as a spiritual space. Recognizing that anybody at end of life, whether it's you yourself at end of life or your family members, it is a spiritual experience, and whatever that may mean for those individuals. So we want to have quiet spaces. We have some beautiful grounds, and we have, the long-term goal is, of course, that they'd be walkways and pathways, so you can get outside, fresh air, and those types of things that you can imagine become important at that time. So they're moments of peace, and that's really what it is. Because everybody comes in here, any resident comes in here, they know, obviously at what point they are. So. We're not trying to cure, we're trying to make comfortable and peaceful and have it be as gracious as it possibly can be in what is otherwise obviously a difficult time.
Mm-hmm. And it provides dignity, I think, to the patients and to the families, and an opportunity. The resources here are absolutely beautiful, the chapel, and actually, which brings me back to the point I just did want to mention again, the Presentation Sisters, because they donated this facility to you.
Yes.
It's not that it didn't need a lot of work. The donation was totally incredible. But what was contained here, the space and the kitchen, and maybe you could just talk a little bit about that.
Well, this gives us, and I can't speak enough about the partnership with the Presentation Sisters, because for the benefit of anybody watching this, obviously their first involvement was the donation of the facility that we're going to refit, but it has not in any way, shape, or form stopped there. And they're very committed to this, and for that, obviously, we very much appreciate that. But we do, because of what this building was, and we're going to do a refit. There are certain things in it, like there's a substantial commercial kitchen. There's a private dining room, the chapel I referred to earlier. These are things, if we were doing a new build, these are things that you wouldn't likely have in a new build. You wouldn't have the green space that we have around it. So because of the situation we find ourselves in, these are things that wouldn't exist in a new build, but they're going to be very important enhancements to what the end result facility will be. So we're very fortunate and grateful that we are in that position, because we think this can offer that spiritual, personal experience that maybe may not exist in a brand new build.
Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes budgets determine what you can have.
Absolutely.
Where this, you've been given the gift that has included all these things.
Sure.
Which is wonderful. Absolutely beautiful.
And we will indeed make we will make use of that. And that's an important part of our design conversation as well, that we want these, peaceful spaces so that, family members can basically, they can get away from, they can step away from the resident room and so on. So we think we'll offer that here, in many facets. Because again, that means something different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mark, there's more than just this. I mean, there are programs that actually will reach out into the community, but also programs for the families, such as assistance with grief, counseling, and so on. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, grief counseling, and we view this as holistic care. So the resident obviously is the reason we're here, but the family is also part of the clientele, if you will, for want of a better word. So we will offer grief counseling for the family, and there is the there is the business side of death, which is, sometimes it sounds cold, but it is indeed, financial affairs, insurance, funeral arrangements, things of that. So we'll provide assistance with all of those things to help the family deal with all aspects of the loss of a loved one, so they can not be preoccupied with those things and have that detract from what they should be doing at that time, which is basically just enjoying the last bit of time with the loved one. And we'll offer as much assistance in those regards as we can, because again, we want them, because everybody who comes here, we're looking at, roughly, you would estimate about a 30-day stay. We would like that the family members of the resident can really focus all their time, their energy and attention on just, maximizing the limited time that they have.
What kind of outreach programs might there be into the community? Would it be pastoral care?
All of the above.
All of the above.
And again, because recognizing that if at any given time, and as you said earlier, we have a 10-bed hospice, those needs or wants for those 10 people may well be 10 different things. We will have people in here that will be of particular faith. We will no doubt have people in here who will be of no faith in terms of no particular religious affiliation, but they will all have, we would anticipate, their own spiritual needs, whatever that may be. For some, it may be just, I just want to sit out in the garden, I want to look at the trees, I want to look at the wind blow through the trees. For others, it may be a religious experience, but we're not tying ourselves to, one or the other. We, as best we can, we want to be all things to all people.
And the care here will be, of course, 24/7.
Yes.
There'll be a team on around the clock. Yeah. Have you determined what size that team might be at, or is that down the road?
That's down the road. I mean, in a general sense, what we will have an executive director, there will be a medical director, and of course there will be nurses and LPNs. So there will be professional care, because, as much as we'll talk about the spiritual and the family, there are still, even though we're not trying to cure the resident anymore, but there are still needs. I mean, they'll need bathing, they'll need cleaning, we'll have a tub room with a lift. So obviously they'll need professional care for that. And that's not something we expect the families to do. And there will be medications and things of that administered, again, not as treatment, but rather as maintenance, pain management, things like that. So, that we will have the professional staff to deal with that. The actual numbers, that that'll be a work in progress.
Absolutely. Mark, I'd like to go back to the fundraising component a bit, because I think it's important to let the communities know how they can help you. And I also want to mention that this is really a provincial facility. And also, I mean, there are opportunities for you to access funding perhaps through foundations across the country. This is an important interview for people to share and to, but as well, how can they help with fundraising? What can they do for you this year?
We're in the process now of rolling out basically a full capital campaign. That is something that would have happened back in the spring, but of course that was delayed obviously by the pandemic. Right now we've actually put out a Christmas giving campaign, so we've went to people who have been supporters and donors in the past, and that's been going very well. So we can be contacted on our Facebook page, and there's online donations you can make on our website. We also still, even though it's changed in terms of how we do funerals and things of that nature, but in memoriam donations, where we're designated as a charity, so donations can be made in the name of the deceased. There are many ways, but check our website and their Facebook page and whatnot, and we will be rolling out in short order the capital campaign as well.
Mark, the website is, do you have it right at the top of your head? Yes?
I'm a bit of a technical Luddite, I'm afraid to say, but it would be LionelKelland.com.
Is hospice in there? Well, we'll get that up on the screen.
Yeah, okay. Because I would just Google Lionel Kelland as a favorite of mine, so I don't type it anymore. Yeah. And I am a Luddite, so.
Well, people can do that. So, and it is very easy to do that, yeah, to go on a website and the connections are there. But if they don't want to do that, of course, you have someone here part-time as well. Mary Kelly is working here.
Yes.
And they can certainly call. Yep. And there's email accessibility. So I think it's important for people perhaps to be a little creative. Some of the ideas I've heard is perhaps if your family members are not making it home this year, which is highly possible, maybe make a donation, to recognize that and to just make an offering that way. So there's many ways people can help.
Well, some of the things that we've at least tried to put out there, of course, for some people, that relative that you don't know what to buy for a Christmas gift, maybe a donation in their name would be appreciated. Employee giving programs, we welcome that. We've had instances where employees in certain organizations, in lieu of exchanging gifts, have made a donation to Lionel Kelland Hospice. So we're open and certainly we'll accept. We'll accept whatever. But there are a lot of options, and it's quite heartening, quite frankly, to see the creativity that people come up with to both before the pandemic, but after, even recognizing that events that would gather a collection of people and lead to a donation, they're challenged now, but yet the spirit and the desire to help is still there, and that's leading to creativity and doing things virtually and so on. So that really speaks very well to the community. And one thing I can't say enough about is the broad community support that we have received from day one. You and Rogers did our town hall back in May, and you would have seen there firsthand the support from the community and the emotion in the crowd that showed up, and one of the things for us as we go through this, and it was tough as we went through the pandemic, because it did create a level of uncertainty. We didn't know, we didn't anticipate, and it got tough at times. But you look back to that and you can draw on that and say, this is what the community wants. This is what the community is behind. And it's a great source of inspiration to carry forward.
And I think it's important to remind people again, you do have support from the government, but it's not going to fund everything. This fundraising component, your capital campaign, is going to be a very important part of the fundraising and your how you're going to make this facility really work annually.
Yeah, absolutely, it absolutely is. The idea is we want this to be it's a public-private partnership. Private being ourselves, we're a not-for-profit charity, and we have we've been a designated charity by the Canada Revenue Agency. But this will be an ongoing process, and of course the capital campaign. Obviously, that's a big ticket item to get the thing built, and of course, but it's also part of building those donor relations and community support that will lead then to the ongoing income to assist with the operating, almost like endowments or whatever. So it's all important, and of course the first stage is the capital campaign at this point, but that's going to evolve into then the annual giving and so on.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're certainly off to a tremendous start. And Mark, the board, they've been working together for a period of time, and you now are the chair. I have to ask, it's a huge personal commitment to make. What was there a motivation in your life to bring you to this role?
Well, I was, when the position came up, I was actually approached by a number of board members to see if I'd consider it, and I was truly humbled by that. Well, on two fronts. One, that they thought I had the skill set to serve in that capacity, and also the opportunity that it presented. So I'm very grateful for that. It is a time commitment. It is at times challenging. Everything doesn't go as smooth as you want at any point. And, we do, but we're moving forward. Sometimes we stumble a bit and move a little sideways, but we're moving forward. And that gets you through probably the difficult times. So on a personal level, I'm very proud to play this role. And I think it's, I think it's going to benefit many, many people. I experienced the death of my own parents at a relatively young age. And, in those times, how we dealt with people dying, they both had, terminal illnesses, and how we dealt with it, we as children weren't even really aware. And that wasn't anybody's fault. That's how people did things in those days. But, from that experience, you really see the importance of how everybody participates in it, and everybody has that spiritual connection. And I'm very pleased that of the role, and it'll be really, when it's all said and done, my role will be a small role in what this place will be. But I'm certainly grateful for the confidence of the board to have me serve in that capacity, but I'm also grateful for the opportunity to give back. And I think that's important.
Well, Mark, I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of many members of our community and our province. Thank you for taking that role, and thank you to the board members for establishing this and as the first hospice in Newfoundland and Labrador. And I wish you only the best. And again, we will remind people, please be generous, and please keep this in your hearts and your mind at this time of year and all year long. And again, Mark, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
And thank you very much for the opportunity. And you and yours have what I hope, it'll be a different Christmas this year, but I certainly hope it's a wonderful and rewarding one.
Well, there's ways to make it joyful. And,
Indeed.
And this is one of them.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And thank you.